Today on the Daily Scoop podcast from the Scoop News Group, congressional Democrats are blasting a plan from OPM and OMB to collect federal workers' health data, and the FTC's work on artificial intelligence is about to expand. It's Tuesday, April 21st, 2026. Welcome to the Daily Scoop podcast, where you'll hear the latest news and trends facing government leaders. I'm the host of the Daily Scoop podcast, Matt Bracken, filling in for Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for joining me. Let's dive into the day's top headlines. House Democrats are calling on the Trump administration to scrap its plans to collect health data about federal workers from insurance companies. The lawmakers argue that the sensitive information could be used to target employees seeking care it disagrees with. The focus of the letter from Democrats to Office of Personnel Management Director Scott Cooper and White House Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vought is a notice for comment about the collection published by OPM in December. That information collection request called for comments on OPM's plans to collect service use and cost data from carriers that work with two healthcare programs that serve federal workers and their families. Those programs are the Federal Employees Health Benefits and Postal Service Health Benefits. The collection request would include medical claims, pharmacy claims, encounter data, and provider data. While OPM said in that posting that the data would be used to oversee the plans and ensure their quality, the lawmakers argue that the Trump administration is not requiring insurers to anonymize the data and also express concerns that it could use the detailed health information against the more than 8 million Americans that receive benefits through those programs. Signers of the letter, which was led by House Oversight ranking member Robert Garcia of California, were specifically concerned about the potential targeting of federal employees who have accessed things like abortion care, contraceptives, in vitro fertilization, gender-affirming care, PrEP for the prevention of HIV, or any other healthcare services targeted by Republicans. The Democrats also noted that impacted insurers have raised concerns about complying with HIPAA, and they're worried about OPM's ability to safeguard the data, citing the 2015 breach of the office. In other news, the Federal Trade Commission is poised to deepen its involvement in curbing the use of AI for malicious purposes, including the spread of nonconsensual, sexualized deepfakes and voice cloning scams. Last year, Congress passed the Take It Down Act, a law that allowed for criminal prosecution of individuals who share or distribute non-consensual, intimate images and digital forgeries, including those that are AI generated. At a Senate oversight hearing last week, FTC Chair Andrew Ferguson called the new law one of the, quote, greatest legislative achievements of the current Congress and President Donald Trump's administration. He also said the FTC was preparing for robust enforcement.
And we are working assiduously to prepare for robust enforcement of one of President Trump's and this Congress's greatest legislative achievements, the Take It Down Act.
Earlier this month, the Department of Justice scored its first successful conviction under the new law when 37-year-old Columbus, Ohio resident James Strawler pleaded guilty to using AI-generated deepfake nudes as part of a harassment campaign targeting at least 6 women. Another section of the law, set to become active in May, will permit individuals to file takedown notices with websites that publish or host sexual deepfakes. Companies will have 48 hours to remove the content or be subject to FTC investigation and enforcement. For more news at the intersection of the federal government and technology, visit fedscoop.com. Up next, we have an interview with Eli Bayraktari, President and CEO of the Special Competitive Studies Project, about SCSP's AI Expo next month in Washington, D.C., and the evolution of AI in the workforce. Let's go to that interview now.
All right, Eli, welcome. So glad to be here and connect with you. It seems like we do one of these every year ahead of the expo that you guys host. They're always phenomenal, and we're gearing up for another one here in a bit. And I really want to dive into that and sort of what to expect for folks who might be in attendance this year, but also some of the different trends and themes that you're following at SCSP. But let's start with the expo. This year's theme is 250 years of American innovations, celebrating the sesquicentennial. I've never heard that word, but no bicentennial, but sesquicentennial. It's a good one. And SCSP has tied the expo to the idea of the third reconstruction of American innovation. So let's start there. How does the AI revolution compare to the industrial that we've seen back in, say, 1776 or 1945 in terms of national survival.
Yeah. Billy, it's always good to be with you. And thank you. You've always done a great job really in following us. I think the first podcast we did was during COVID. It's just online, so it's been a while now.
I think this is the first one we've done in person.
Right. So thank you. I mean, look, every year we try to like put a theme on our expo. And I think this year, given the celebration of 250 years of American, state and birth of this country, we wanted to really put a theme on top of that. So I think if you have seen buses around DC, it says year of innovation, celebrate 250 years of innovation and American ingenuity. So we wanted to give a theme there, and obviously we have covered AI for now 8 years as a project, as a team. And I think if you subscribe to the idea that we are on the verge of yet another big turn in our history, in our country, where AI is taking us, we thought it's appropriate to call it the third phase of our country. The first being like the birth of the country, second being after World War II, when America built the world order that we live in today. And I think the next one that is happening in front of us right now is really the age of AI. And I think given that the AI Plus Expo is sort of like the title of our expo, we thought it's appropriate to go with that theme.
Well, it's exciting, and I think it's very accurate. And I know SCSP has always been very sort of ambitious about the way it talks about AI and how it's going to really revolutionize the world, but particularly national security. And you really talked about the decisive decade when you first launched SCSP, and that set to end in 2030. And we're about halfway there now, 2026. Right. And so I would be curious, thinking of that decisive decade, are we winning, quote unquote, and where is the scoreboard sort of leaning today in terms of our work towards that really important progress in the deciding decade?
I mean, I feel like we're living it right now every day. When you look back, Billy, the first time I started like reading or like learning about AI was 2018. Mm-hmm. I think in 2019, we started the AI Commission's work that you also covered extremely well. And I remember back in 2018, there were still two schools of thoughts about AI. There was one that thought, oh, there's another, wave of AI, but it will end up in an AI winter, because we have had these AI winters for the last couple of decades where there was a lot of enthusiasm, a major technological breakthrough in terms of computer or algorithm, but then it would hit a wall, and they used to be called AI winters. And there was another school of thought in 2018-19 that thought this time is different. With image recognition, machine learning, natural language processing, there was a school of thought that now is the time that we will see this exponential growth in AI. And today in 2026, I think we're all living it. Yeah. I think we're all using it. You have choices of different AI models. And just in the last 2-3 years since the release of the major ChatGPT model, you have probably had 8 dozens of releases of every new model being better, more powerful, more bigger. So I think we're living that moment now, that a lot of us were reading about it probably in 2018 or like seeing the early like sparks of where this could go. Why this makes it a decisive decade, as we talked before, is we're not alone in pursuing this technology. Yeah. We have argued time and again that our major competitor, China, is also doubling down on investments in capabilities, in companies, because they also realize that whoever like dominates this technology will set the rules of the road for the next couple of decades, probably, if not this century alone. And so that's why we call it a decisive decade, because we wanted that by the end of this decade, American platforms to win, American way of life to dominate, and then, values and norms that we project through these technologies to be used globally instead of what the alternative would be Chinese. And so that's why we always argue this is a decisive decade. And I think it's still work in progress. I mean, I think we have always argued that there's not an end date with technology in which you say we will win or they will lose. Yeah. This is a very dynamic situation in which, you saw it with DeepSeek release last year that all of a sudden Chinese can get ahead with an open source model. And so I think there will not be an end date here in which we can call it a win or they will call it a win. I think this will continue for many, many years, and not just on AI, but across all the technologies that matter, because this is how the foundation of the future of the economy, the future of education, society, work is being built right now. So obviously this will be a dynamic competition. And I think our goal is not to lose sight of that competition, but actually stay focused, stay organized, invest in science and technology, invest in people, because I think ultimately this is about people and who uses this technology for what purposes. I was listening on the way to work today, one of the Wall Street executives, and he was saying that, we used to work 7 days, and then humans used to work 6 days, and then it came down to 5 days, but 12 hours a day. And he was arguing that maybe with AI, we can move back to 4 days a week. Not mandatory, but people will see going forward like what makes sense. And so this is another evolution, I think, in terms of how we interact with technology and how technology impacts our life and our work and everything around us.
It's incredibly quick paced, and like you said, you're kind of going through the the sort of growth curve of how AI has come about. And I think where we are right now, agentic AI is really defining this current moment. And it's something I think back as you described 3-4 years ago, we might not have anticipated we'd be here already. So I'm curious, as we look forward to the expo and sort of think about the way that the federal government, particularly the Pentagon, is adopting and moving from chatbots and LLMs to agentic AI. What does that shift look like for the Pentagon from AI as an assistant to more of AI as an autonomous staff officer? And how's that going to play out at the expo this year?
Right. So I think at the beginning of the year, we said this is going to be the year of agentic AI. Now, I would also argue that like the capabilities of the agentic AI is still not there, to be honest with you. And when you look at government adoption is always more riskier. It takes time. And so like I would argue that agentic AI will probably first be adopted by, ordinary citizens, you and me, Billy.
Sure.
I have 3 agentic AI that I use daily, for example.
Yeah.
2 for like family related activities and 1 for my professional related activity. And basically, they don't do crazy stuff yet. It's just bottom line of like summarizing my emails, providing me logistics with where do I have to bring my kids during the day for different activities. I'm sure this can relate to you.
Yes.
So instead of me thinking, am I going to hit traffic on the way to this field, or how's the weather going to be in the afternoon, because it might change, as we have seen the last couple of months. Weather in DC has been wild.
Yes.
Agentic AI can do all that for me. So that's a pretty, what I call it, a narrow system of capabilities these agentic AI can do right now. Now, your question about the adoption in government, I've spent like more than 12 years in government. Government is always slow to adopt these things, no matter how much appetite we have, no matter how much signal and demand you have from the workforce. Government, because of the role, because of the operational security, cyber defenses, and all these things, government will always be much, much slower to adopt these capabilities. So I think in terms of agentic AI, I think what I would look forward to in the next 12 months is that the agentic AI becomes so like a narrow agentic AI for the purposes of, let's say, summarizing your emails, or drafting the first draft of that email, or summarizing your calendars. I worked for a 4-star general, and one of the tasks we had was to analyze his calendar and to see where he spends his time more productively, how much time he spent at the White House, how much time he spent with his team, how much time he spent with like his counterpart. But it would take 5 individuals on our team to sit down probably for a month to do this analysis. Now with agentic AI, that's done in like 5 minutes.
It's incredible,
probably, right? And then so if you and I want to have that kind of an insight of where we spend our time and our priorities, you can easily just have somebody in the background that always is looking out for like, hey, you have spent more time now outside of the office or inside the office. You spend more time doing podcasts than you spend time doing research or whatever. But I think this year would be that year in which that agentic AI adoption starts flowing into the government, and people start seeing the benefits of that. I think a wider agentic AI adoption really depends on technical infrastructure. Like, we always say like, it's easy to, I think people have this perception that it's easy really to plug and play whatever exists in private sector into government.
Yeah.
It's not that easy because you don't have the same infrastructure. You have different risk issues you have to worry about. cloud infrastructure is always like 2 steps forward, 1 step backward in the government. But I think for the agentic AI to have, and people talk about this next generation agentic AI, in which my agentic AI will talk to your agentic AI, and all this arrangement that we had to go through between you and me to schedule this podcast would be done by our agentic AIs. Yeah. And I think for that, I think we still have some time to go. I think you need some kind of a protocols to be developed, because you will probably use a different agentic AI from a different company, that agentic AI that I will use. And so in order for them to really talk to each other, I think you have to have some common protocols in place. Private sector companies, I think they're moving in that space right now, because if you try to, let's say, go from one of the platforms using agentic AI to, let's say, buy a book in Barnes & Nobles online, it's not very seamless. You still have to go through cookies. You have to create a profile in Barnes & Nobles or sign in as a guest. So there are many, many steps that are still not working, because I think, let's say, Barnes & Nobles doesn't have yet a common protocol that is working with one of these large language platforms. So I think we have ways to go, even in private sector, if I can see, before this moves into the government, where two agentic AI can start talking about scheduling meetings, doing notes, writing papers, or executing any kind of capabilities going forward.
Yeah, it's a fascinating landscape, I think, to watch, just the implications of this world of AI agents that are out there doing things that, like you said, there's a lot of development that needs to happen before we get there, but definitely exciting to see what happens in that area. One of the other spaces that I know that Expo is really paying attention to is physical AI. Right. We've seen China really making massive strides there with robotics and autonomous manufacturing. I'd be curious, we don't hear so much about that here in the US, and if the US is more focused on software and sort of the language models and whatnot. So what's the race and sort of competition like between China and the US on that front? And what's the conversation going to be focused on at the Expo, where you're talking a bit more about physical frontiers this year?
I think where we are now in terms of robotics and advanced manufacturing, I think a natural evolution and development from large language models is now physical AI. I think for many, many years, we had companies that were trying to make it a breakthrough in terms of robotics and building robotics. We've seen videos online, we've seen that, but I think they would hit a wall because it was just the technology was still not there. So I think the AI gives a new window for these companies really to move into the next step of whether there are humanoid robots or robotics for advanced manufacturing. So we started noticing that, China, in every other technology, is coming out with some incredible capabilities. I mean, they have several companies that are really good, and given the scale and resources that China has, you saw just a major breakthroughs in terms of production, in terms of deployment of these humanoid robots from China. What we have done is in the last couple of months, we've done a couple of things. Number one is we have done a net assessment. Where are we versus China in this space? Secondly, there was a lot of chatter in our Congress to create a commission on this. Because of our, as you know, Bill, because of our budget cycles and legislative side, we thought that this is such an urgent issue that we created the commission. So we have two senators, Senator Slotkin and Senator Rudd, co-chairing this commission. We brought some of the leading companies we have with academics. And the next 12 months, we're going to look at, we two aspects of this. Number one is, what do we have to do to move faster in the space? And number two, for this administration, building manufacturing back, investments, they're all part of this new era of AI in reindustrialization. But who's going to work in these factories, right? And so unless we get, to make huge advancements in robotics and advanced manufacturing, we will have all these investments, all these plants being built, but we will not have humans working in them, just because I think the labor has moved in terms of where are we now as a country? And so that commission will look also that piece of, this equation. To your last point is, for the first time in our expo, we will have a robot arena.
Nice.
We have 5 companies that will bring cutting edge robots they have built. And I think some of them are really amazing, without going into highlighting one over the other. But I think you will see for the first time demos from these robots, from these companies, what it means to bring you a glass of water, moving around and helping with just household items. And so we have built a special space at this expo where we will showcase, that, or give you a glimpse of that future that I think we will inevitably move, because I think there are certain jobs, certain skills, and certain tasks that I think we will benefit by having robots doing them instead of humans. I will never forget, Billy, but when we were at the AI Commission, the Japanese embassy came and they briefed us on their AI strategy. And it was called, if I remember correctly, it's been a couple of years, Society 3.0. And it was built
Great
from
name.
2035 forward. And it was all dependent on robotics. And I asked them, hey, how is the sentiment in Japan, vis-a-vis robots? Because generally, there's this anti-sentiment when it comes to robots, based on the movies, based on everything we have seen so far. And they said, look, we have no choice. Given the demographics, given the trends that are happening in Japan, where, you have more people in the old age than in new age, he said, our choice is really no choice. We have to build robots to take care of elderly people in our country. And so for me, that was an eye-opening situation that here's a society that understands where they're going and why they need to build this kind of an industry, because otherwise there's nobody else to take care of your citizens. So I think, luckily, we don't have the demographic problem, I think, in the United States, but still, there are certain skills and tasks that I think robots will do compared to humans much, much better, faster, probably, with less cost. So it's fascinating. So I invite everybody to come and see at the expo. We will showcase some of these robots in our demos.
That's incredible. I mean, I think getting to experience those things, but also learning from the commission will hopefully be an eye-opening moment. I'm one of those, I would count myself within this sort of interested, but maybe skeptical. So having those opportunities to kind of grasp.
No, we have ways to go. I would say, I watched a lot of videos online about these robots, and we have ways to go in terms of I was watching this video this morning. Is it faster if I go get a bottle of water from my fridge, or whether I take one of my robots to do it? And, there are videos online, as you can imagine, that people count how many minutes does it take for a robot to do it. Now, are you going to be patient and wait 2 minutes for a robot to walk from here to there, open the fridge, bring you a bottle of water, or you can just go and do it yourself? Sure. But these robots will change, as you know. They will evolve. They'll be better, faster, more skillful. And so eventually you will have that robot, Billy, that will bring you a bottle of water faster than you'll get it from your couch.
Love it. So sort of taking the conversation in a bit of a different direction, if you're in the national security, defense, AI space, you've heard a lot about this Anthropic decision that the Pentagon made to list it as a supply chain threat, because it wouldn't sort of kneel to the department's wishes in terms of letting it use it for whatever it wants, essentially. Anthropic had guardrails and kind of objected to the Pentagon doing that. So that has left sort of a post-Anthropic fallout environment in the government, where we see more of a private sector companies maybe doing things with their AI models that they maybe didn't want to have done. So all that said, I'd be curious, what's your assessment of the adoption of AI for national security in the aftermath of that? What's the environment look like now that that decision has been made?
I mean, look, I'm no longer in government, Billy, so it's really hard to probably know every side and every detail. I know there's a court case about this right now happening. I thought from the beginning, this is an unfortunate situation that we shouldn't have not gotten here for both sides. I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding on both sides. First of all, I thought the Anthropic, despite all the respect I have, and we're friends with a lot of people in Anthropic, I think they should have understood better the role of Department of War in this case, or Department of Defense. I mean, I spent 12 plus years in government, especially in DoD, and I think the role of Department of Defense, when you read the mission, is, lethality to launch war if deterrents fail, and if you need to launch war, you win the war, right? I mean, so it's a pretty clear mission that has been there on the website for many, many decades. So I think that's the misperception I think Anthropic had about the roles and responsibilities. And also, sometimes I'm a bit skeptical about to what extent these things are used. Because I think everybody that it's outside of government thinks that every time you put AI in warfare, you think about killer robots. You think about AI-enabled lethal autonomous weapon systems. Sure. And that's not always the case, Billy. I don't know for what purposes Claude was used, but sometimes technology is used from scheduling appointments to doing timesheets to doing travel. So like there's a range of DoD missions
Yep.
that you can use these models. I think on the outside, the sense was like this was used for the most critical lethal autonomous weapon systems
Yep.
that ultimately killed people or was involved in a kinetic action. We don't know that. And I think you just need to have a much more understanding of what DoD does writ large to understand like maybe Claude wasn't used just for that. Maybe it was used for other left of conflict, more non-kinetic like capabilities. So that's, I think it leaves that a little bit unclear. On the DoD side, I thought it was an overreaction to make a determination that Anthropic is a supply chain risk. I don't think they should have gone that far. Like with every contractor, there are terms and conditions that both sides have to adhere to.
Sure.
In this case, if the company didn't adhere to, you can cut the contract, find another vendor. But like I think calling them a supply chain risk at the time when we all know where the risk is, whether it's from Russia or China, I think just elevates the bar for a company that it has an incredible capability that will help our men and women in uniform.
Yeah.
So I thought there was a lot of misunderstanding. I think they both came from like different positions into this conversation. And then when it escalated, like nobody wanted to back down. And I think we need as a country, both sides to cool off, like find a space to understand each other's concerns, obviously, and find a way to bring Claude back. Because I think if it's a great model and our men and women in uniform need it, I think we should give it to them. I think we don't want to live in a situation in which everybody has access to like our best model, to include maybe China, but our men and women in uniform don't have it. And so I think it went a little bit to the extreme, which we thought it was unnecessary. But I think we live at a time when we have to sit down, have a normal conversation, and solve this outside of the court, because I think now it has gone to the point that we have to let the court decide about this issue.
Yeah. Well, it brings an interesting point too. You were sort of hinting at this, but how AI is currently being used in ongoing operations, whether it's Venezuela, Iran, or elsewhere.
Right.
And I'm curious your take on that. I know we don't have full clarity into exactly how it's being used, but I think it's a good indicator that maybe we're adopting AI at a rate that is better than we might have previously thought, because it seems like it's now playing a more central role in some supporting mechanism, or maybe in a direct way in some of these operations.
No, you're right, Billy. And this, when we look back at the commission, the one question we had to answer was AI for DoD for what? And so we broke it down into 4 categories. The first one was like back office responsibilities. Can AI help you move faster in terms of back office responsibilities, including cyber defenses? Absolutely. We talked about timesheets, we talked about payrolls, emails, document editing faster and all these things. Absolutely. The second category that I think evolved for the last 3+ years is indications and warning, where AI can take this massive amount of information and really give you the bottom line up front. Or look at the imagery and say, like, we see movements in this space that is an anomaly, you should pay attention. And I think you have so many companies that have evolved because of AI and this indications and warning, which is used primarily for intelligence purposes. And I would probably guess that a lot of AI that was used for Venezuela or Iran has to do with, like, do we see patterns here?
Yeah.
Do we see behavior that we can, predict going forward? The third category was decision-making. AI can help you move faster. Absolutely. We see it daily. And, my job in the department was always to give more options to your leadership, right? With AI, you can give so many options. You can have AI analyze, red team it for you, provide the pros and cons. So I think that one is the space we're probably looking at right now more actively, just because if DoD or DOW has access now to the models, I would ask, if I would have to write a memo, I would ask any large language models in front of me, I would say, like, hey, what is missing in my memo? How can I make it better? What options have I not thought about it? And then you would bring it to the leadership and say, like, hey, it's up to the human then to decide the course of action. I think the most sensitive part that I think everybody jumps into is the AI-enabled lethal autonomous weapon systems. And I think what's happening in Iran and what happened in Venezuela, now people are actively talking about what capabilities might have been used there. Ukraine also opened another chapter in how you can use these kind of capabilities. And so we'll find out probably like as this conflict against Iran evolves, what progress has been made in that space. DoD has a directive for lethal autonomous weapon system. It has been in place for many, many years. It has been updated. And so we will find out, I think, Billy, in terms of like, did AI enter that space? How it was used on weapon systems or not? Or was it just enabling humans, really launching these weapon systems to do maybe a faster action and counteraction?
I mean, one area that we really haven't touched on yet, but, really is, all part of this is sort of the space race. I mean, we're watching it play out on TV today
exactly.
with what's going on with Artemis too. One of your reports in 2026 focused on the space race in the 21st century. So how much of our AI advantage is going to be determined in low Earth orbit and play out there over the next 2 years?
So there are two I think pieces to your question. Number one is obviously we're in the competition with China on space. We wrote a report, as you mentioned. China has a clear goal. They want to land. They want to do lunar landing by 2030, right? So I think the Artemis 2 and I think the subsequent Artemis are really trying to get ahead of that and like beat China there. Space matters for many, many things, as you mentioned, for communications, military operations, just like everything we do probably daily, one way or another. If you look back at the start of the Ukraine war, I think Russians went first after Ukrainian satellite capabilities, and then they started like ground invasion just so they can blind them before the operation. In terms of data and energy, I think you have now a couple of ideas floating out there that in absence of us building more energy on Earth, you have to build, outside of Earth, these new energy sources, data centers, because of the limitless possibilities that exist. We'll see how we get there. I mean, you have a couple of companies that are thinking about it, doing work in this space, but it only shows you that this whole area for more energy, more data centers really is not going to stop in the foreseeable future, that I think companies are looking for other ways to expand their foothold.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I think AI is that thing that seems to be tying it all together. So it's really exciting to watch. I'm sure there will be a lot of those threads connected, bringing it back to the expo. And so as we close out our conversation, I've been to the expo, but for somebody who hasn't, it's grand. It's a lot going on. There's a lot to learn, but for somebody who's listening into this conversation who might be interested, what's, something that you would think is a top takeaway that you would hope they'd walk away with about American competitiveness, and what do you want them to see at the expo this year?
So this year, what we have done, Billy, is like, look, I think expo is an experience. Like you can build your adventure if you come there. If you're interested in quantum, probably by the end of 2 days at the expo and being confronted with all the discussions and expertise on quantum, you'll end up understanding quantum better. So we wanted to build that kind of a environment. This year, what we're doing is we have Thursday and Friday built for like more than 200 conversations. As I told you, we have a robot arena, drone arena. We have a bookstore, in the age when people, I love bookstore. Like, I think in the age when people don't buy any more books as much as they used to, we have built every year, the bookstore has been bigger and better. This year, we have 12 authors coming in our biggest bookstore yet, where you can sit, you can listen to the author talk about his book or her book, and you can buy the books, actually, physical books, because we partner with the Kramer's Books here in DuPont Circle. And then, as I mentioned, on Saturday, which is different from last year, is on Saturday, I hope that families with kids will come, because you can build a robot. Awesome. You can have a STEM workshop. So you have a hands-on experience with what does this technology mean? How can I touch it, and how I can feel it, and how I can build it? So this year's, I think that's a different angle that we are exploring at the expo. But again, it's an experience because we have allies and partners coming. We have tech companies across the tech sector coming there. We have incredible lineup of speakers. It's just a lot, but I think it's an incredible experience to learn. But also, if you want to push yourself to build a robot, you can do it on Saturday. We have universities coming on Saturday explaining how you build a robot, how you do STEM and all these things. So I just invite everybody May 7th through 9th here at the convention center in Washington for an unforgettable experience, I think.
Well, I'll be there The Scoop publications will be there. We'll be watching, covering it. We're really excited as always. The bookstore, I love it. I fanboyed a little bit when I saw General McChrystal there last year. It was very
the line
cool.
for his book signing was like really, really long.
Yeah, it's very cool. So I can vouch for it. Definitely the place to be. Really excited to see it this year and wish you guys the best of luck.
Thank you for having me, Billy.
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Daily Scoop podcast, available on all podcast platforms. If you've already rated the podcast on your platform of choice, thank you. High ratings and good reviews of the show help more people find it. The Daily Scoop podcast is a production of the Scoop News Group in Washington, D.C. Adam Butler and Carlin Fisher help put this show together, and the entire Scoop News Group team contributes. We'll be back tomorrow with more top headlines. Until then, I'm your host, Matt Bracken. Thanks for listening.